ladies and gentlemen, we have Ryan Macasero, independent journalist and writer. You're the first writer we have on Creative Pickings, man.
Wow.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, at least professionally. First professional writer. So I know we were briefly talking about it just before we started this podcast, but why did you come here? You're from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Elsewhere. He's an alien. Why did you come here to the Philippines from San Francisco to pursue writing?
Right. Well, since I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was looking for writing opportunities, and I didn't think that it would be here in Manila. I actually wanted to end up on the other coast in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
Or New York. And then, but I was a big fan of Maria Ressa, who's the founder of Rappler. At the time, the team was really small. I think they had about 40 people, and they were looking for more. And then so they got back to me, and they were like, yeah, we're looking for more perspective of Filipinos who didn't grow up here. And then I came, and without thinking too much about it, 3 months later, I was like, okay, let's go. Not knowing anything about Manila. So my parents are from Cebu. So when I used to come visit as a kid, I didn't know much about the city. I'm a suburban kid, so yeah, it was a big shock, but it's 2019, I'm still here.
That was 2013, you said, right? Wow. So moving from San Francisco to Manila, just by yourself, know nothing, I'm just gonna figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And I could barely speak Tagalog when I got here. So
did you guys speak? Well, your parents are from Cebu, so naturally, I guess they know some Bisaya.
Yeah,
but
we speak Cebuano at home.
Yeah.
So, and Cebuanos themselves, who even were born here, struggle with Tagalog. So that was a big challenge.
Different province, man. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I didn't think too much about it. Didn't have plans. I didn't even know how to get a place, but I think I was just itching to get out of where I grew up.
Yeah.
So
Needed to change.
Yeah.
Were you already an independent writer prior to coming here? Because you followed Rappler. Yeah, were you already writing? Were you already into politics? What was your background in that?
Well, I studied international relations, so I thought I wanted to be a diplomat.
Oh.
And then I got an internship at a local newspaper, but it was very very, very hyper local issues. Like I remember writing things like about a dog show, or like the oldest person in town's 100-something birthday. So very.
That's how you start, right?
Yeah,
that's the one. That's the thing that most journalists hate, but you kind of got to start there.
Exactly. But they would pay me like $50 for the article, and I was something I would do after work. Like I was after college. That was like right after the 2008 mortgage crisis.
Oh, wow.
So there wasn't a lot of job openings at the time. So I had a college degree, but my first job I was working in a stockroom of a retail store.
Wow.
And a pool hall. I was making sandwiches, so a whole bunch of things with this college degree. But I knew that I wanted to be a writer. So even though that most of the opportunities were on a freelance basis or per article, I was like, I'm gonna do it after work. So even if I worked a 10-hour shift, I would still find something after work because I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Writing is it. How did you decide to choose that specific style of writing? Well, I guess you're gearing towards what would you call it? I'm actually not well versed in.
Okay. Well, the what you see on the front pages of the newspapers, it's basic news writing.
News writing is what it's called.
Yeah. So what's happening in national affairs or all of the political drama, that's just news writing. But there are different types of journalism that you can get into.
Right.
My most recent feature story that can be considered creative nonfiction, where you take a little bit more liberty to illustrate with words the story that you're trying to tell. So it's not just your basic who, what, when, where, why, but it's written in a more cinematic way.
So that's where you throw in your own flair.
Yeah, exactly. So journalism is as creative as you want it to be. Not everyone wants to be that kind of writer where they tell nonfiction or truth, real stories in a more artistic or creative way. But if you want to, you can.
Interesting. Actually, that brings me to there's a fella I met. Quick story. There's a fella I met a few years back. He was here from a different country.
Yeah.
And he was here for 3 months to report on the state of affairs of Philippine politics.
Okay.
But he was asked to be one-sided. Let's just not state
Okay.
which side. But it was really interesting because his work required him to be biased towards one side, but he felt the other.
Okay.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that for news-related journalism?
Well, okay. That's a debate. I think that in the news world that people have been having for a long time is that the idea that journalism should be unbiased or neutral, and that concept I think has been thrown out the window by a lot of veteran journalists and even people my age who are practicing reporting the news, because as human beings we are, I think, inherently biased. So even simple stories, like if I go to a political rally, for example, and I am there observing the event and listening to what's happening and asking questions, what I choose to tell you in my report is my choice. So I decide what's important for the reader, but the way to make sure that you're doing it in the most fair way possible. I think it's not about being unbiased, but as being as fair and as accurate as you can are the most important things. The facts and where it can get twisted if you don't have a good sense of what's important for the public to know. And that's depends on how well you know the journalistic process. And can I just summarize what the journalistic process is just a little bit?
That don't know.
Okay. Well, in just to put it in a nutshell, in journalism school, what the process that most reporters go through is contextualizing in the name of the public interest. So what is important for my reader to know from this event, and what's not important. So, for example, is what the president eating, is that something that the reader absolutely needs to know, or did he speak on some policy issue that affects everyone, like foreign policy, or did he lay out his agenda of what he wants to do for the country for the next 6 months? What about it? Is he telling the truth? Because you have, as a reporter, you've built on knowledge, and it's called stock knowledge. If someone, for example, a senator is saying something and it's not accurate, is it fair? Is it right to not call it out when you know it's wrong and just report it as it is? That's not contextualizing. So, based on what you know as fact, it's our job to check if they are telling the truth, because as public officials, it's their job to serve the public and tell the public the truth about what they're doing and what's happening, because we're paying them with our tax money. So that process of fact-checking, that process of contextualizing what's important for the public to know, arranging it in a way that's arranging the story in a way that's easy for the reader to understand, all of that is part of the journalistic process. And if you don't know it well, you can be in danger of just amplifying propaganda. Which happens
a lot.
If you take the person that you're interviewing and their word for it without checking if they're telling you the truth, then definitely you're in danger of not reporting accurate information to the public.
So why does that happen then? Inaccurate reporting, or I guess it's just purchased journalism, or like they're just being purchased, is what I mean? Like, is that just, in your opinion?
That does exist. There are reporters who are media corruption is a big problem in the Philippines. I wouldn't go as far as saying that most reports that you read in the media are like that, or are bought or inaccurate. There are some. But most reporters that I know try their best to report as accurately as possible. And then there are some that we're human beings, so we make mistakes. And the good reporters, when they do make mistakes, should hopefully apologize for it and admit and hold themselves accountable. Like, I did not intend to make this error. I apologize, but this is this is what is the truth. in a subsequent report, or if it's on a website, an editor's note at the bottom. And sometimes some reporters are just pressured to get the story out before deadline, so they don't do a good job of vetting the information and making sure that everything that's in the report is accurate or contextual.
Right. Man, it takes a lot of character to do that, to apologize if you screw up, and to even write truthfully. Because obviously we're human beings. We all take sides. I guess when you see enough of both sides, at some point you're gonna choose one. Do you have that in you as well? Like, do you choose a side, or are you neutral when it comes to these kinds of things? Because you deal with a lot of news and politics, I guess, right?
I think because I have my opinion about everything, but as a reporter, you have to go in there and kind of try to remove how you feel about it.
So you keep it very neutral as well. You don't use striking words or emotional.
I do sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, but I wouldn't call it neutral. I would call it like, I'll check that person if they're not telling me the truth, or if they're saying something to try to confuse the public. I'll call it out, and it won't always be in a muted way. It can
It's still facts. If you're confusing people, that's a fact.
Yeah. So it's tricky. Like, it takes confidence to really, like, play with the language that you use in the report. But I like when we talk about choosing sides. I would not like to think about it as like in the Philippines, politics can be very personality based. That it's either I don't even want to say those words, but it's either you're with this person or that person.
Yeah.
And I don't like to think about it like that. It's about are those people doing, how are they behaving, and what policies are they supporting, and how does it impact the communities. All I know is that what I stand for is human rights. I believe in human rights. I believe in protecting marginalized communities, and if there are policies that certain people are supporting that harm these communities, then I will ask questions about it, and
that makes sense.
and tailor my questions that way, and that is biased in itself. But if you're working for the public interest, then I think that it is our responsibility to ask those questions.
Yeah, it's a journalist's job to unravel what it is towards the public's interest.
Yes.
Although the public's interest can sometimes be all over the place.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, it's also if you're all for human rights, then I completely understand you want to ask those questions. Because you're probably not alone in that sense anyway.
Yeah.
But taken away from politics and biased journalism, let's dive into creativity.
Okay.
Like, how did you develop your style of writing? Because there's many formats, as we said earlier. So how did you choose yours?
Well,
And what is it?
I read a lot of The New Yorker, so they do a lot of what's called narrative journalism. So it's like reading a novel. The kind of language that you would see in works of fiction, like even Harry Potter, or what's another
Harry Potter style journalism.
It can be. And a lot of when I read another writer that I really like their style, I take a little bit from them, but not to the point where it looks like I'm trying to copy them. So Patricia Evangelista is one of them. I work with her. I've worked with her here before.
That's awesome.
And actually, as corny as it sounds, a lot of the journalists that I've worked with at Rappler are people I've been reading for a long time. So in that sense, I feel really lucky that I've got to learn from them up close and not just reading their words on pages growing up. So the kind of style I don't know how to describe my personal style, because I don't think it's anything that I've invented. But I know, like, my process though, when I do go try to tell something more long form, like in the recent one that I did about Balake, the hip hop artist who uses his hip hop to speak truth to power, use it as protest art. I went to his concerts or his concert, and when I'm there, if I'm there to write about it, I look at everything and try to absorb everything that's happening around me. Like, what do I hear? What do I smell? What do my taste buds tell me? And
It
try
was a
to
very descriptive article.
right,
Yeah.
and try to articulate it with words. And I take mental notes, and I have my little notebook. And so when I'm not facing anyone, I write down like everything that I sense.
Wow, cool.
And when I have more than one subject, the tricky thing is to try to weave all of those things together. So it takes a lot of internalizing and like what do I sense and how do I make the reader feel the same emotions that I'm feeling? How do I make them smell, hear, and taste the same things that I'm tasting using words?
All of the senses. That's difficult, man.
It is.
So the process, you're jotting down notes as you're there. Obviously, you're not able to write it on the spot.
No.
But when you go home and you try to recollect all of this, heck, do you do it like right after? Do you do it like 2 days, 3 days? Because it's hard, right? Like when you get back to your notes and you see and you have a bunch of, let's say, voice recordings, you have some notes on a notepad. How do you put it all together?
Right. Because the events might happen like some time apart. So, and I might not even write it until a month or two later.
A month or two later.
Yeah.
So you've got those notes in there for a month.
Yeah, so I know that if I know that when I go home, I want to make sure that I don't forget what I was feeling at the time. So the most important things that stick out to me, for example, like I could smell menthol cigarettes, and that might seem very minor or to someone, but it could make a difference. But you have to be confident in your storytelling skills to make sure that it's not the reader knows that why that's important, and they're not like, why are you telling me this, like this unnecessary detail.
But it makes a difference.
It does. It depends on how you on how you put it together. So or so sometimes you go in a room and like if your mouth is open, you can taste what's happening in the room too.
Yeah.
So those kinds of details too. Oops, I think I pressed something.
That's okay. It's still going. Yeah. So you actually tackle all the different. That's really interesting. See, I don't know a lot about writing, so for me, that's really, really interesting. But when you read something and you realize you are able to dive in to someone's writing more so when they describe all the senses.
Yeah.
I guess that's what you studied.
Yeah. And trying not to get lost in those other details that the meat of the story is still in the person that you're talking to. So when you get like too carried away with, I walked into a dark room and the smell of cigarettes hit my senses and this and that, and then until like 6 paragraphs later, that's when you get to quotes from the person that you interviewed.
Right.
So you lose the reader.
Just forget it, man.
Yeah.
So
it takes
describing too much.
practice.
Yeah,
It
I'm
takes
sure.
advice from other writers to look at your work and critique it. And then as you do more, then you build that confidence of, okay, I know what I'm doing now.
Nice. What sparked you to come here instead of to do journalism in San Francisco or even New York?
Well, at the time, it was just the opportunity just presented itself, that they were looking for someone, and when.
But you've been following, I guess, Rappler, for example, for years on end prior to even finding that opportunity.
Well, it was only a year old
okay.
at the time, so it was still a startup. But those
okay.
journalists have been in the business for a really long time. The founders of the company, and because. Well, when you're fresh out of college, when everything that is available on the job sites is like you need 5 years experience to do this or 10 years experience, and someone's willing to take a shot on you, then no matter what the risk is, it's like I have to give it. I have to do it regardless of what the outcome might be. It might not work out. It's definitely a gamble.
Yeah.
But I guess it's one that's worked out so far. I'm still around.
Yeah. What, 6 years in?
Yeah.
What's been like the most difficult thing having moved here? Obviously learning the language, but work-wise,
I think it's just because the news is nonstop. So you need stamina, multitasking skills definitely, to make sure that, because you're working on not just one story at a time, but you could be working on four, short stories during the day of what's happening on the day itself. But on the back burner, you can work like on something longer, like a piece of creative nonfiction, or something that's like 2,000 or 3,000 words. Yeah.
So you do that kind of stuff too outside of like journalism style writing. You also do creative writing?
Yeah. Well, creative nonfiction and poetry, spoken word poetry. That's my hobby. But during the day, it's not just like you walk into an office. You're there from 9 to 5, and then you go home. Whatever your life is dictated by what's ever happening in the news, what's ever happening in the country that day. So if there's like a big robbery at an SM mall and it's happening in your area, and you're working for a news company, you don't even ask if you have to go. You
It's
go.
just autopilot.
Yeah.
You've been doing this so long that I guess every time there's something, you're on it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a hassle because I'm like, holy, you can be already in bed and then you check Twitter and something's happening and you're like, okay, crap, I gotta get up.
Yeah, how often do you turn off? Like, do you need like regular sabbaticals or something like that? Because, dude, with social media, it is nonstop.
It was worse when I first started.
Yeah.
For the first like 3 or 4 years, I think I slept. I would check Twitter in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And that was unhealthy.
You'll go crazy.
Yeah. Now I think have a little more sense of control over it.
Good.
As much as possible, as much as you possibly can, and that's can be a whole discussion itself, how to stay sane while you're trying to be a reporter in the news.
Right. Well, in the years that you've been doing it freelance here in the Philippines, like, I actually wanted to make this a last question, so it's something to send off for all our listeners. What would you say brings or would bring the most success for someone who's pursuing this field?
Freelance writing?
Yeah. Even what you're targeting, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you headed towards the journalism world? Is that where you'd like to be?
Well, that's right now. That's all I've known, I think, for the past 9 years.
There you go. So more or less.
So yeah, as a freelancer, it's definitely a whole nother game, because you're not working for a particular company, and you're building off of your all of the work that you've put out there already. So it definitely takes putting the courage to put yourself out there. It can be scary to approach an editor and be like, I would like to pitch this story. They don't know who you are.
Right.
Trying to convince them that this story idea that you have is worth investing in.
So that's what you have to do constantly.
Yes, so those are cold pitches, but
Buy my story.
yeah, but there are if you've been doing it for a while, you can have friends who are you make friends who are editors, and you just text them. So it gets easier once you build more credibility and exposure. Once the industry starts knowing your name. So in the beginning, it does take a lot of that. Like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, work on your craft constantly. Work with editors who will tell you when your work is crap.
Yeah. Wow. That's tough.
Yeah, definitely. I've had editors who've made me cry before.
What?
Yeah.
Like, was it really that bad though? Do you recall?
Yes, I remember. I've had editors say when your lead sentence, what's wrong with your lead sentence, Ryan? It's crap, to my face. And it hurts. It hurts at the time, but it's those kinds of things that, one, gives you a thicker skin. Two, after they say it's crap, then they'll say why it's crap, and then point out what you did wrong. And it takes building that self-awareness to know how to improve upon it and keep improving upon it, and to not crumble every time you get a bad comment.
I love that. Actually, I know that was supposed to be the last question, but one more just Pablo question.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on grammatical errors, sentence structure errors, and spelling mistakes in all these formal media outlets?
Well, I think that
happens a lot.
Yeah. I think that's definitely. I would blame that on the online 24-hour news cycle itself. Because we do we do have editors when you're trying to get the story out there, and I've read my story 5 times before I submit it, and even after it's published, I'll find crap, I missed a comma on inverted letters.
But you have editors as well, right?
Yeah.
You and someone else. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know how to solve that. It's the same problems with 24-hour news cycles on TV where they keep repeating the same stuff over and over, make mistakes because they have to be on 24 hours a day. Online, since you don't have that pressure of it's going to be printed forever, and you can fix it anytime, I guess. So
they just edit it afterwards.
Yeah, edit afterwards. So even when I have an article, I've been working in digital for a long time.
Yeah.
So even after an article is published, I'll still read it 10 times, sentence per sentence, until I feel okay, I think I found the last grammatical error.
Oh man, it's tough. The reason I mention that is because I see it so often, and it's the bane of my existence too. When I do these videos, I caption everything, and there's at least one error per video. I'm just like,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's annoying for the reader, but it's also difficult on your end.
Yeah.
So. Man, anyway. Anyways, Ryan, thank you so much for being part of Creative Pickings,
Thank you
man.
too,
Good
thank
luck
you
to
too.
the rest of the journalism world. Cheers, man.
Thank you.